Chapter 25. Act 2. Mist was far too pleasant a word to describe the dark, ominous mass before us. My throat felt tight and dry as I surveyed the eastern horizon from the foredeck. It was only 8 a.m. I should have seen the bright morning sun sparkling off the cerulean sea. Instead, a foreboding wall of thick gray fog stretched endlessly from north to south. Menacing storm clouds billowed above us, blotting out the sun. Even the choppy ashen waves seemed nervous as they pushed anxiously against our double hulls. But our boat showed no signs of slowing as it powered fearlessly toward our impending engulfment. Here. I turned to see Ronnie dressed in fluorescent green foul-weather gear, holding out a thin, braided rope toward me. I stared at her. Isn't that our mooring line? And aren't you dying of heat? The boats don't sink, right? She said, ignoring my questions. So if we're tied to the boat, we can't sink either. I nodded at her logic. How long is that rope? She shrugged. Let's find out. Our boat didn't have a mast since it wasn't powered by sail, but it did have a 3-foot-tall, 9-inch-wide white pillar built into the back of the foredeck. I hadn't discovered any purpose for the pillar other than to partially obscure the view through the front cabin windows. It sat uselessly, smack dab in the middle of the boat. So that day, we gave it a purpose. With Ronnie's help, I tied a rope crisscross around my torso before securing it to the base of the pillar. I helped her do the same. I wasn't sure how useful our rope tethers would be in the mist, but it felt good doing something to prepare regardless. By the time we finished securing ourselves on the foredeck, the sun was a fading memory behind us. The dark wall of mist was less than 1,000 feet away. An unsettling chill in the air made me envy Ronnie's jacket. My knuckles turned white against the foredeck railing as our boat powered forward. It was difficult to tell exactly when the mist began. The air around us thickened into a cold, clammy cloud as the sky darkened above us. A strange hissing sound echoed unnaturally throughout the encroaching darkness. My breath quickened, and I wiped my sweaty palms on my pants. You're going to die. I couldn't tell if the sibilant whisper came from within me or from the mist around me. We were now completely encased in the inky black mist. I could barely see Ronnie standing 2 feet away from me. You made the wrong choice. A low, ominous rumble came from beneath us, like some undersea leviathan was searching for prey. What was that? Ronnie squeaked, pressing in close beside me. Her arm trembled against mine. Doesn't matter. The boats don't sink. I sought reassurance in our familiar mantra, but the tremor of doubt in my voice was obvious to us both. It was so dark, the mist seeped inside me, scratching my throat, burning my eyes, sinking into my skin and filling my nose with an acrid metallic stench. Was this it? Was the mist going to dissolve and consume us? I held up my arm in front of me, but all I could see of myself was a hazy outline. Time blurred as the whispering voices swirled through the darkness. You're following a lie. You're not good enough to survive. Give up while you still can. How? I wanted to ask. We were on an autonomous boat in the middle of the Sarding Ocean. We couldn't just turn it around. Fear and helplessness threatened to overwhelm me. Then Ronnie wrapped her arms around my wrist. Her warm, solid mass was indescribably reassuring. Tell me you hear the voices too, she pleaded in a whisper. I do. I whispered back. What do they mean by give up? I don't. The mist shifted around us. I squinted into the thinning fog. A tiny pinprick of hazy light pierced the wall of gloom. Greetings, voyagers, welcomed a soothing male voice from nowhere. Ronnie and I both squeaked in surprise and clung to each other. You're not going to find what you're looking for. The disembodied voice continued in a pleasant, incongruous tone.
It doesn't exist.
Who are you? Ronnie demanded into the darkness.
If you stay on that boat, you're going to die.
The solicitous voice continued, oblivious to Ronnie's question.
You made a mistake, but don't worry, we can help you.
The light in front of us grew brighter and brighter as we approached. The welcoming glow resolved into a row of lanterns floating a few feet above the murky water.
See those lights ahead of you?
Asked the strange yet enticing voice.
They're attached to a dock, and moored to that dock is a boat that will take you safely back to Eridet.
More lights blossomed directly in front of us, revealing the promised harbor in the storm. The dock appeared sturdy, clean, and welcoming. It was over 100 feet long and 20 feet wide. In the middle of the dock stood a small but cozy hut with light streaming enticingly from its windows. On the opposite side of the dock floated a white double-hulled boat, similar to our own but pointing back toward safety.
You've had your adventure,
the voice crooned.
You've proven your faith. Now it's time to go home.
We were only about 200 feet away from the dock now. Our boat slowed as we approached. The light and warmth of the dock shined in stark contrast to the thick, inky nothingness beyond it.
Join us,
the warm, disembodied voice invited.
We have cookies.
Our boat veered off to the left of the dock.
Seriously, though, if you don't get off that boat, you will starve to death,
the voice warned in a much faster cadence. I glanced at Ronnie and saw my own fear mirrored in her eyes.
Yes, look at each other, the voice taunted. Choose now whom you'll eat first. Pro tip, pick the person with the largest thigh muscles. Quadriceps are very nutritious. Or you could do the same thing and disembark.
Do you think we should? Ronnie started. No! I wasn't going to allow myself to even begin considering it. We have over 100 days of provisions, and the boats don't sink. I reminded her, though our mantra seemed to be losing power. We're safer where we are. Our boat drifted parallel to the dock. We moved at a glacial pace a mere 14 inches from the dock's solid polymer planks.
Now's the time,
the voice invited.
You're only a short, easy hop from safety.
Pleasant laughter came from the hut. Was my mind playing tricks, or was that really the smell of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies? Ronnie took a step toward the dock. I grabbed the back of her jacket. What are you doing? I hissed.
What if Jack's in there?
She whispered, staring longingly at the brightly lit hut.
I thought I heard his laugh.
No, they're messing with you. I tugged on her jacket. Do you really think Jack spent the past 10 years sitting in a tiny hut in the middle of this mess? My shoulders sagged in relief as Ronnie turned her back to the dock.
Right,
she agreed.
I need to sit down.
She sank onto the foredeck bench, pulled her hood over her head, and covered her ears with her hands.
Last chance,
the voice warned in a sing-song voice as our stern cleared the dock.
Don't let this be the last light you ever see.
I scowled into the void. The sickly sweet voice was noxious, but its words reminded me of something. I crouched down and rummaged in the foredeck storage compartment until I felt what I was looking for. I mentally kicked myself for not thinking of it earlier. I stood and flipped on the handheld spotlight. I smiled triumphantly as the beam shot brightly across the deck. Seconds later, my smile faded as the dark mist reduced the light to a dull flicker.
All right, then.
The voice sighed in resignation. Then it hardened into a deep, primal growl.
See you in hell.
With that, all the dock's lights abruptly shut off, plunging us into renewed darkness. I smacked the side of my spotlight with my palm to resurrect the beam. It spluttered but remained dim. I pointed it back toward the dock anyway. As our boat turned starboard toward its original course, I glimpsed the faint outlines of the dock, the hut, and the return boat on my right. They appeared shabby and oddly hollow in my spotlight's dying beam. Sploosh! A loud splash shattered the sudden silence. I turned my light toward the source and saw a small dark shape bobbing ahead of us and to the right. I recognized the head and torso of a human in a life vest. "Someone's out there!" I called. "Ronnie, help me with the life ring!" Instantly, Ronnie was at my side. "Emily, wait! Everything here is a trap. What if— I'm not going to let someone die!" I thrust the spotlight at Ronnie and snatched up the surprisingly heavy life ring. Maybe it was a trap. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe the person had gotten trapped on the dock and wanted to get back on Panosyn's path. Maybe they had useful information. At the very least, I wanted to reel them in close enough to explain themselves. I wound up my arm, prepared to throw the rescue line to the unfortunate soul. But as the spotlight's beam illuminated the face, I saw we were too late. Waxy gray skin stretched around empty orbital sockets, yellow teeth bared in a silent scream. A ruby pillbox still sat pinned to thin, oily strands of hair. Ronnie screamed and dropped the light. It hit the water with a small ploop and spiraled down into the inky depths. Bile burned up my throat as I sank to the deck in shock. The life ring slipped out of my listless hands and rolled off into the thickening darkness. "Oh, Sard! Oh, Sard! Oh, Pano freaking Sard!" Ronnie collapsed next to me in a mumbling heap. The world became pitch black. We truly were going to die. So what if the boats didn't sink? We'd only been in the mist for what? An hour, maybe? We still had 71 days left until we returned to Eridet. No way we could survive that long in this darkness with its miasma of despair. We'd go insane. At the very least, we'd develop a vitamin D deficiency. Was that fatal? And who knew what other horrors the mist concealed? Thousands of people had disappeared into this mist. People who were smarter than me, more experienced than me, more versed in scientific and religious lore than me. Why had I been arrogant enough to assume I could make it out when none of them had? The only thing I was coming to see was my own fatal naivete. As my thoughts spiraled down an ever-deepening pit of despair, I wrapped my arms around my knees and clenched my eyes shut against the hopelessness. Coldness seeped through my chest as I took a shuddering breath. A bright light flashed behind my eyelids. I raised my arm protectively in front of my face and slowly blinked open my watery eyes. A panel on the front of the previously useless foredeck pillar had slid open to reveal a pure white light beaming out into the darkness. I turned to Ronnie, huddled beside me. She looked as dumbfounded as I felt. We waited silently to see if anything else would happen. Nothing did. The light continued to shine brightly, leading our way through the mist. "Why the Tsar didn't that turn on earlier?" Ronnie complained. "Better late than never?" I shrugged, though I shared Ronnie's sentiment. I pushed myself to my feet and cautiously stepped toward the pillar. I jumped as something pulled at my leg. I looked down and let out a sharp sigh of relief to find my foot tangled in Ronnie's tether. I shook myself free and cautiously reached toward the pillar. I expected it to be burning hot, but it was only mildly warm. As I touched the pillar, a sweet sense of peace swept through me. Suddenly, a passage from the Book of Panosyn came to mind. "And a pillar of fire shall give them light, to lead them the way, by day and by night," I quoted out loud. "What?" Ronnie crossed to stand next to me. "It's a pillar of fire." I gasped in odd realization.
I think it's more of an LED searchlight,
Ronnie corrected, peering at the pillar. No, I mean Panosyn's friend mentioned this in his book, I explained excitedly. Panosyn promised he'd provide a light, and here it is. Do you know what this means?
That if you write vaguely and symbolically, people can fit their own interpretations into your work?
Ronnie guessed. That too, I conceded. But I think this is one point for literal interpretation. The book prophesied of a light that could cut through even the thickest darkness, and here it is. Ronnie remained unconvinced.
Wouldn't a literal pillar of fire be made of, fire, not an electric searchlight?
The guy lived over 1,600 years before the invention of electricity, I defended. If he saw an electric searchlight in a vision, pillar of fire was probably the best description he could think of.
Well, I hope you're wrong.
Ronnie stared into the vast darkness on either side of our searchlight's narrow beam.
Because I sure as Sard don't want to see a literal 7-headed beast.